Welcome, everyone, to an evening at the Quill and Tankard with your favorite moderators of the Song of Ice and Fire subreddit. We're going to talk about episode 2 of season 7 of Game of Thrones, entitled Stormborn. I am one of your hosts, Michael, better known as Bookshelfstud.
I'm not entirely sure if we're your favorite moderators, but I'm Eliana, also known as Glass Table Girl.
And I'm another one of your hosts, JoeMagician, also known as Matt.
I am Sam R., also known as Samuel.
I'm Fat Walda.
And I'm AdmiralKird.
All right, let's get this show on the road.
Just like the intro. We like the camera.
Oh, yeah. So ours will swoop down just like the intro sequence.
We'll head over to Pike.
Yeah. Why was Pike in this episode's intro?
I saw it and I thought, well, this is going to confuse some people.
It confused me. Let's move off Pike for a brief period of time, out into the Blackwater Bay a little bit, over to that famous storied isle of Dragonstone, where Dany landed last episode, and now she's sitting down with all of her buddies.
Buddies?
Best frenemies.
Her chicas.
I mean, a lot of these characters are meeting for the first time, so there was a lot of that this episode, I feel like. One of those, obviously, is Varys, who did order an assassination on Dany at one point, which is a little awkward, I guess.
Oh, he said he was King Robert.
Yeah.
But yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Along with many others.
He just facilitated it.
I'm glad that they decided to cover this. I'm glad that Dany decided to have this conversation on screen with Varys, because I thought for the longest time, because we saw him at the end of last season on the boat, traveling to Westeros, that we weren't going to get this and it wasn't going to be a point of conflict. And when you're writing a show that's a drama, you need dramatic interactions and conflicts. And this is one of them, and it showed, except for a couple of points that came off as kind of weird to me, which was like when Varys said, "I have come from nothing. I had flashbacks where Zorro's own Doxos was flashing before my eyes." And then there was the line, the "I choose you."
Pikachu.
Daenerys.
Oh, God.
Daenerys.
Oh, no. That must have been a really awkward boat ride the entire time over. Danny's just like giving bad looks at Varys like, I know what you did.
It reminded me of, like, in movies when two characters are having a conversation and then it cuts to a new location and they continue it, like, unabridged, as if the car ride in between never happens. It reminded me of that thing, thinking, how have they gone through all these ship travels and, days standing around before that day, and this has never come up.
I guess maybe he didn't really speak in front of her that much for most of the time. He was just kind of like there and didn't know exactly what to say. They could have written that into the beginning of this episode a bit better if that was the angle they were going for.
Well, maybe they just didn't talk, they didn't talk at all when they landed on the Dragonstone beach. Maybe that was the whole ride over.
The whole way over.
Maybe no one was allowed to talk until Dany got to Dragonstone.
True.
Silence. Wait. Silence is a different ship.
Well, they're on a jetpack, so a jetpack is really loud, and they couldn't hear each other.
Very true. Maybe they just put Varys on the uncool ship, and Dany stayed on the cool ship with her friends. That's how they handled it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then so this is the moment where Varys is Lindsay Lohan, and then Daenerys as Regina George just finds out that all the protein bars she's been eating have been causing her to gain weight, and she's like, Lindsay Lohan, why did you do this? Why did you try to assassinate me?
I think that's correct. Yeah, that works out.
So which one of them gets hit by a bus this season?
Foreshadowing.
I was surprised he didn't bring up, isn't it canon in the show that Jorah got advanced warning of the assassination and prevented it? Or is that not canon?
Well, when Jorah intervened over back in Face Dothrak, he did it on the suspicion that he knew an attack was going to come because he got the letter that was his full pardon. So he figured that he had completed his mission, so he assumed he didn't get tipped off by Varys that any kind of attack was coming.
That's true,
Good
not
point.
directly.
Yeah. It's also something that I
important.
wrote like fan fiction over in like Westeros.org about for a long time.
Hell yeah.
Which was like,
all
Varys has to say is, did anyone drink the poison, Daenerys? And it was like, no, nobody drank the poison because they knocked it out of the wine seller's hand, and then he was drugged behind the cart. His admission of guilt was his attempt to flee. Nobody actually drank the poison, so all Varys has to say is, like, it wasn't actually poison, but the wine merchant believed it was poison. But I don't know why they didn't just go with that angle. It would have just been like, you're totally exonerated, buddy.
Did you guys think it was interesting that Dany's talking about how she doesn't want to be Queen of the Ashes? And that was originally a Varys quote about Littlefinger, that he wanted to be King of the Ashes. So Dany is sort of, I mean, not that she knew about that quote necessarily.
There's a similar one, I think, from King Aerys. I think he said, let them be the kings over cooked meat or something. It's a similar line.
Charred bones, cooked meat.
Charred bones, cooked meat, something like that.
So here's a thread from one of our users who makes an interesting observation, which apparently is unintentional, as Waldo points out in the conversation, but the title of the thread is An Observation About Dany's War Council by user Jessica Rose, and Jessica Rose points out Dany's entire council is not made up of, like, what people would societally consider real men, or whatever, because she has Varys, and she has Grey Worm and Theon, all of whom have been castrated, and then
Tyrion too.
Tyrion isn't necessarily the pinnacle of what they consider masculinity in Westeros as a dwarf, and then, of course, we have the old woman Olenna Tyrell, and then we have the other women such as Alaria and Yara on the council, and Melisandre, so it's a really interesting war council compared to everyone else.
Oh, I'm just really surprised that isn't intentional. That feels like such a thing that, you know, in the inside the episodes when they, like, talk about how proud they are of, like, a certain thing they did, or they kind of pontificate about, look how forward we are or anything. I'm surprised to hear that that was just an unintentional thing, how it became a much more nominally feminine thing, seemingly just by how they normally write the scripts, throwing the darts at the wall, or however they do it.
They're all women and, like, some versions of masculinity. How interesting.
And another point that was brought up just now, like in the History of Westeros podcast, which I was only able to catch a little bit of, it was brought up about Illyrio Mopatis. Why wasn't he mentioned in this scene? And they wanted to have Illyrio, I'm pretty sure, back for like season 5, to have him back at his manse, but there was a scheduling conflict and they weren't able to have him back. Because he was acting in another play back up in England. And D&D, when they have these actors who aren't able to make it for when they have their tight schedule, they tend to take kind of great umbrage when others don't show up. Like Conan Stevens, who played the Mountain in the first season. As soon as he wasn't able to come back for the second season, he was done in the show. Ed Skrein, who played first Dario, he decided to just straight up leave, and they're visibly upset in interviews when they won't even talk about him. All they'll say is that he left us. Clive Mantle, who played Great John Umber in the first season, as soon as he wasn't able to come back for the second season, he was done. So it's the same thing, like, they just don't... Illyrio's out of the picture, like, at this point, generally because of politics.
Damn.
Now that you mentioned that Illyrio, they just couldn't book him, do you think that's part of why they rewrote... I mean, maybe they could have just done it to streamline plots, but maybe that's why we don't have the Fagon plot?
No, they had that first scene with him there in season 5 written differently. But then when he couldn't show up, then they like threw together this dialogue. The point in the scene that Varys does, it's kind of like almost he's going back and what do you call that when you go back and you fix something that
retconning?
Retcon.
He wanted to retcon the lines that they had in season 5 about Varys' reasons for overthrowing Robert, because he was just like, he would be a terrible king, and like that's all he said. The scene was so thrown together so quickly, like the dialogue was very weird, and it was about like, oh, for like my country, and it was like, why would you say my country? You'd say your king, the Seven
I think
Kingdoms.
they're probably better off. I mean, explaining Illyrio without Aegon or or Quentin or Arianne is just so difficult. I don't even know why you would try.
I think,
you know, maybe he was going to be back for this episode and it was another scheduling conflict, because they go back down to the dragon skulls later on in the episode.
Yeah.
Like that same place where we used to see...
I think it's kind of neat D&D to retcon something relating to Illyrio, since there's been over the years so much fan gnashing of teeth trying to reconcile their conversation in book 1 with all the Fagon stuff and the plot lines, and the people try to wrap this whole twisted idea, because it may have been that George just changed his mind a little bit and retconned a little things about their plan when he came up with all the Blackfire and stuff around this book too.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like a convergent evolution thing. D&D and George, this one character, stumped in both.
They both decided, this is too complicated. Let's try something else.
Then Melisandre shows up.
Whoa!
That's
Comes
right.
back.
I liked how she first off addressed Dany in High Valyrian, and then also talked about how she was a slave.
Yeah.
I'm glad they wrote that into her introduction to Dany. That makes a lot of sense.
She knows how to speak to her audience.
Yeah, true. She's
true.
still a good performer, no matter what.
But you burned one kid, and that's all I remember you for.
Just one?
Also, for the first time since season 3, Melisandre had something to do.
Wow.
She was actually relevant.
Melisandre,
She
grammar
had a
Nazi.
purpose.
Someone, I wish I could remember who, pointed out that it would be funny if Stannis was undone because of a grammar mistake in the prophecy.
Grinds teeth.
Oh, princess. Oh.
I thought it was interesting they gave that Melisandre line to her and taking away from Aemon from his time with Sam when he was just losing his mind.
Ranting about things.
I really liked that scene. I thought it was great how he just sort of info dumped, but it's better for the show. I understand now just for Melisandre to have literally anything to do with this.
Yeah.
So, while we're bringing up things that History of Westeros said tonight, right before we recorded this, they made a really great observation on how Melisandre's introduction is filmed. Like, Melisandre steps between Dany and the throne, and it sort of seems as though, Melisandre, especially when she presents this thing about the king in the north and the news about Jon, and that, he could be a really great ally. It seems like as though that's something that's standing between Daenerys and being able to get the throne.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
With Stannis and I think with Jon, both of them made Melisandre prove that she knew what she was talking about in some way. And Dany seemed very willing to sort of, I don't know if she was just making light of what Melisandre was saying, but she seemed pretty on board with accepting that she might be a savior. Maybe it was just like humoring her, but maybe it was like, maybe this is really in her head. Like, oh yeah, I am pretty great.
I mean,
if I birthed 3 dragons,
exactly.
I'd believe a lot of things about myself
exactly,
too.
Yeah. Like, Jon and Stannis have, well, until Jon came back from the dead, they didn't really have any reason to think they were anything special. But Dany is the first person to have dragons in 150 years. Nothing to sneeze at.
Stannis had a bird.
He had a really cool bird, yeah.
And
its wing was proud.
He was Blood of the Dragon.
Only one of them.
Vaguely.
And in the show, she's like fireproof, so like,
True.
There's a lot of things that one could make one think that one is a savior.
I thought it was a little weird that nobody brought up with Dany's council, like, what is this prophecy about the long night coming and what does this all mean? Nobody says anything about that. It's like they kind of just accept it in the scene as like something that's happening. The threat of the White Walkers. Shouldn't they be like, what are you talking about? This war for the dawn thing.
Especially Tyrion.
Like what you're saying, Aaron's totally right. I find this season's kind of leaning on audience knowledge a bit more, just because I guess because they're lacking time. They can't be bothered to write all these scenes that take up 2 minutes each to fill in everyone. They'd rather just the audience knows what we're talking about.
Well then,
hand wave.
Well then you have Melisandre is like, well, there's this prophecy about, and Tyrion's like, hold on, let me get a drink, and then you cut from the rest of the scene, and then it's explained off camera.
No, Tyrion apparently doesn't drink like that anymore.
That's right. He's got his little AA point. I think maybe it speaks to how seriously they were taking Melisandre when in the next scene with their planning out their strategy, they don't talk about Jon or the quote unquote long night. Like they don't give any craps about what she just said.
Yeah.
That makes me think that Dany was sort of giving them lip service, yeah.
Exactly. They're like, oh yeah, sure, yeah, get Jon down here. That sounds great. And then they sit down to, have their adult talk.
So anyway, Tyrion then has this great plan for attacking Westeros that Brendan Beefish loves, of course.
It's an interesting plan.
You can quote us on that. Yeah. He loves this plan.
Resident military expert.
He wants to lay siege to King's Landing with the Dornish sailing up from Dorne, have the Tyrells and all their bandmen stand outside King's Landing, have the Iron Fleet coming behind it, and then randomly take Casterly Rock too. Okay.
The Casterly Rock thing is a little weird. That's kind of unnecessary. And their fleet, because the Iron Fleet is now indisposed, ferrying those troops, it can't escort the troops for the Unsullied over to Casterly Rock, so they have to travel there without any kind of escort all the way up to the Lannister coast.
It's Grey Worm and his elite guys, and they're sending them off to take Casterly Rock, which is... I mean, it's an important symbolic thing to be like, oh, we took away Cersei's home, but it doesn't really do that much in terms of like what their plan they're trying to do. Like, let's say you encircle all of King's Landing as Tyrion thought. Well, if you take Casterly Rock, that doesn't really do much. Cersei's already encircled. She can't go do anything about it. You wanted to leave King's Landing. So it kind of hurts my head a little bit.
Do you think the gold has anything to do with it? That Tyrion believes that Casterly Rock still has all of this wealth?
He could. Yeah.
Well, maybe, but it's not brought up in the scene, so you just kind of
Right.
like wonder. It's just like, we're going to take the Lannisters home.
He sells it by saying like Westeros goes with Casterly Rock, and it's like, no, it went with Tywin.
I'm gonna argue in favor of Tyrion's plan though, because
Okay.
I think if the point is to undermine Cersei's symbolic authority, trapping her in King's Landing and then picking off castles throughout Westeros, like nobody's gonna want to support. None of the other lords are gonna want to support her if she's stuck in King's Landing and they're just getting bled by the Unsullied and the Dothraki. And what better way to kick that campaign off than by taking Cersei's home at Casterly Rock? Like I think that could be a symbolic victory that wins over lords and stuff.
It's also a really good point that you don't want the Unsullied and the Dothraki marching on King's Landing.
Yeah. That's a strong point.
Yeah, I gotta agree with that.
I just kind of thought in terms of like, what would be the best way to deploy your troops in this way, assuming you have the plan of surrounding King's Landing. If you hit Casterly Rock, you're going to trap forces in the Westerlands because they're going to try and take it back from you.
They're stranded
obviously.
there. Yeah.
But if you don't take Casterly Rock, the Lannister armies are going to be forced to come towards King's Landing, and you can hit them with the Dothraki out in the open. That's what you want. This sort of lets the siege go better, but it doesn't really help the eventual trying to take down the Lannister army plan. Unless it fails. If it fails and Cersei goes right towards Casterly Rock to take it back, then it works great. Which, ironically, happens.
In some ways, they could have also added a couple more scenes in here that has to do with, like, Dany knows this stuff about King's Landing from the prophecy that she had at the House of the Undying. And she might be scared still about, like, destroying King's Landing with Dragonfire, and that she's really trying to prevent it. And you got Melisandre there, and she could provide insight into, like, what Shade of the Evening does, and its visions, and how much she should trust it. And so there are a couple more scenes that they could have gone with in here, but they don't have the time because I guess they felt that they couldn't spend all this money shooting these other dramatic scenes. So
that's a good point about the House of the Undying thing, because in the show it is specifically King's Landing burned or snowed on or whatever the hell, but it's ruined.
Yeah, although they do have the 7-pointed star where Cersei's new Lannister line has replaced it. So continuity error. Maybe they should have rethought that set redesign.
And Michael, didn't you have some point about characters spelling out their plans on screen?
Oh yeah, it's just like a truism of any story. Anytime a character spells out a plan or what's going to happen on screen, it never goes that way because that's boring storytelling. That's like the characters tell you what they're going to do and then they do it. It's like, I'm going to go from point A to point B, and then they go from point A to point B. It always, if they say they're going point A to point B, then some weird going to happen right in the middle of point A and point B. So as soon as Tyrion spells out that whole battle plan, you're like, no, come on.
Yep. Everything's going
does
wrong.
not bode well for Grey Worm.
Anything else on Tyrion's magnificent plan?
Jeff brought up that it was dumb to ferry the Dornish army up to King's Landing when it would make more sense for them to link up with the Reach army and just march up together, and nobody would mess with that army.
Maybe the Stormlands? We don't know who's in control of there.
Yeah, we haven't known anything about the Stormlands since season 2.
Yeah. Maybe that's where Gendry went.
It's Lady Merton's.
Edric Storm's making a return.
I have a theory that the Shadow Baby never actually died, and it's leading a cabal in Storm's End of nothing but Shadow Babies, and the land is now just like Shadow Babies everywhere.
It is,
I guess, Shadow adults.
It is Stannis' heir, like it's of Stannis' seed, so it does have potentially a claim to Storm's End.
It's the last trueborn Baratheon.
Who's gonna sit the Iron Throne at the end? The Shadow Baby.
How do you beat it? It's shadows.
That's an official Quill and Tankard sponsored opinion.
It was this thing we ran into like last episode, like trying to figure out what Three Kingdoms Cersei holds. We don't understand who controls Storm's lands.
Stormlands.
Storms.
Who knows? It could be
Just
anybody.
Throw somebody in there.
Jeff had pointed out that it was dumb to sail past Dorne to get to Dragonstone. Without, like, just stopping dumb. And getting the army.
Yeah. I just assumed they had the Dornish army.
I get not necessarily, because they would be sailing up and they wouldn't know what they were encountering along the way. And if you don't need to have an army on your ships to risk it at sea, then don't do it until you've secured Dragonstone, potentially. With what she had. They had a backup plan with the Dornish army.
Or they could have dropped.
So they didn't need to risk
They
it.
could have dropped off their Dornish and then sent ravens.
Right.
As Tywin once sent ravens to Walder Frey
Yep.
to have the Red Wedding. Or as Robb sent ravens to Edmure, but without clear instructions, but it still made army plans.
Well,
Yeah.
would they have any ravens at Dragonstone? Because nobody's been
they're
taking
sending
care of them.
They have dragons.
That's true. They have dragons.
They had one to send to John.
True.
At least
True.
one raven. That's all they had.
Yeah.
That was their one call.
Well, the first thing they did was send someone down to the corner store to get some ravens. I mean, that's just good policy anytime you move in.
You got to do that.
I think there's a neat little story here of just one guy who's been like taking care of the ravens the entire time and is like holed up and he's very weird and he's just like, I like birds.
Yes.
I take care of birds. My aviary.
Do you think it's like Proudwing come back from the dead? Just taking care of ravens?
Proudwing? What?
I mean, Shadow Baby Proudwing?
What?
Sure.
Shadow Wing. So
Yep.
Sir Robert Proudwing.
Yes.
what I liked about the follow-up scene with Olenna, where she and Dany talk together, is that Olenna is now taking the role of Dario, in that she is the one urging Dany to just
I don't want to
unleash the
picture this.
dragons. I mean, like think about it, like, you know, in terms of the archetypes in the scenes. Now it's Olenna who's going, all men are either butchers or meat, except she's saying it a little differently.
I saw Olenna with her like speech of being like, "You're not a sheep, you're a Dargan," of like telling Dany. It felt to me like Dany's weird dream in the desert at the end of A Dance with Dragons, where she realizes her identity of I'm a dragon, and dragons. I thought Olenna was going to tell her dragons plant no trees,
Something
burn
like
it
that.
all
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
But because like that's where the
That'd
speech
be
seemed
cool.
like it was going.
Yeah.
So
We don't use iconic lines like that in the show. We use iconic lines like, "That's not me."
Oh, we'll get to that's not you. We're gonna get to that line.
your sister.
Do you think this is something that Olenna is saying because she's really ticked off about her entire family getting blown up in King's Landing, or is this something that Olenna would have told a conqueror queen anyway?
That's a good question.
Because it's not really the message that she was giving Marge, and it's not really the message she had ever given Sansa.
She could be more desperate, I guess.
I think she has kind of lost it
Yeah.
in some ways. She does not care about anybody's well-being at all now after she lost her family. I mean, I can understand that from her perspective.
There was also right before Olenna did this, Tyrion laid out his plan. Olenna was skeptical of it, gave him like the stink eye, and then talked to Dany afterwards. I'm not sure what the purpose of her advice is. It's sort of, she's sort of saying like, don't listen to Tyrion.
Well, she's impatient with his like faffing around with Casterly Rock, right? She's like, just do it. Just Leroy Jenkins your way in and take King's Landing. You've got the army. You can do it.
She wants Cersei dead more than Tyrion does.
I think
which is
so.
somewhat surprising.
Headcanon out of nowhere.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
Olenna Tyrell. Been around for a couple of wars. Maybe she's not fond of sieges after Mace Tyrell's failed siege of Storm's End. And so she's like, this failed, stupid men like my son Mace Tyrell. Don't listen to them.
Peace.
Just take action. Just take Storm's End, even though you couldn't take Storm's End because a storm couldn't take whatever. Take King's Landing and just do it. Don't wait, or else you'll miss your opportunity. And the Onion Knight's gonna come and give onions to everyone, and Ned Stark's gonna
that
break
metaphor got a little.
This is
Great.
where is this going?
Yeah,
No,
they
that's-
should have gone with that.
That is exactly how they should have written that, though. Is like her, you know,
That would have been better. Yeah.
like talking about her idiot son again.
Ileana Cogman.
I did it.
My
Good
my
job.
idiot son, rest in peace.
R.I.P.
They could have had her do like one tier Mace.
Mace might be like a silly son, and like, but he seemed like a lovable son. You know,
He was wonderful.
Yeah.
He was a
He
great
seemed
guy.
like a very loving
singer.
son you could
Yeah.
love,
Mm.
He loved hats.
despite his flaws. Yeah,
he
he was a good
a
father.
historian. He loved music. He was a great guy to hang around.
He lived
Yeah.
large and he died like he lived.
He lived large and trying to be in
I lost-
charge and through his children.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we did it.
Grey Worm and Melisandre.
Why don't they close the door?
Get some privacy, guys. What are you doing?
They couldn't find anyone to hold it
Oh, if Hodor walked in and just held
too
it,
soon.
held it open for everyone to
Oh my
watch.
gosh.
The ghost of Hodor just walks around the world like opening doors now. He's really pissed.
Maybe Melisandre just wanted an escape plan.
In case things got really awkward, she could just hop out and run. Yeah.
Or they're exhibitionists. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Kind of tinfoil. Maybe as like former slaves, they're not allowed to have closed doors in their private quarters or something weird like that, like for their masters.
Is there a door, or is it just an open doorway?
There was
It's
a
a door.
door.
I remember
She
they
opened
leave
the
it
door,
open.
and I was like, "Oh my god, is she gonna close it?"
Yeah, but
Like
really,
no secrets from their masters. kind of thing. I
how
don't know.
many million people were watching it anyway?
I don't know how many people
Like,
watch
Do you
Game
think
of
they
Thrones
knew?
every week. All of us.
That's what I'm saying. What's one door, you know, that a couple
True.
people can watch through when you've got a million people watching anyway?
Yeah.
This would be a crazy way to break the fourth wall. A sex scene with Melisandre and Grey Worm.
So I mean, I've always kind of been a fan of the Grey Worm Melisandre stuff, if only because there's like not. It's probably the only thing in the show where it's just like two people who kind of like each other and they're having like an awkward romance. Like it's just the only thing in the show.
No politics,
now.
no ulterior motives.
Right? Yeah,
Just a couple of kids.
You know, cute people being awkward.
Just wild,
But
wacky
I'm
kids.
pretty sure they covered the story beat with like "You Are My Weakness." I thought that was how Grey Worm wrapped up last season.
I feel like we see the same arc every year.
Yeah. So like
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the point of the scene was. I thought it was, I mean, actually a beautiful scene, but if you had asked me if I thought that they had already gotten to this point in their relationship, I would have been like, yeah, last season at least, if not the season before that,
Yeah.
right? Like I thought they were already
yeah.
there, and this seemed to me like this was the first time, so it was a little confusing for me to try to figure out what it meant.
What I got from the scene is I just assumed it was another case of my lord getting off on annoying the audience.
Oh my!
It gets
sweet
pretty
lord.
explicit towards the end,
Yeah.
where if the camera was just in focus a little bit more.
Thank goodness, because Game of Thrones needs to get back to its softcore roots. That's what I've been saying. For
That's
years.
but like that's the way that
Oh,
was
it was
shot.
not going soft
That's the way it was
core.
shot. Like it wasn't
That was-
shot. The rest of it was shot like a beautiful sex scene, and then they get to that angle. I'm like, this is not an angle that I expected. I've seen this angle, and I don't see it in TV shows.
Melisandre walks in and she's like, "I heard your cable's out."
Exactly.
Who's deine Kabel reparieren?
Things that
I also love the smash cut at the end to the hand in the book. I was like,
Yes.
oh god,
There
what are you
was
guys doing?
there was no way that was not intentional.
to the celibate men.
No, like
The whole
no,
hand,
no.
though.
So there was, I'm not going to describe it. It was go
There's a hand in
go
a
back
book.
and
What are you
watch
trying to
it.
say?
Go back and watch it.
They looked a little like dusty though.
The heavy
the books in the Citadel.
the heavy
Oh, not
breathing.
Melisandre.
The heavy breathing even like carried over into the scene in the Citadel.
Yeah.
That's pretty
That could
cool.
have been
I
the
didn't notice that,
maesters with like the books. They just like heavy breathe over them. Oh yes, a history.
Fire and Blood, Volume 1.
They don't have that book.
I do have a serious idea though of why they showed
Okay.
this scene,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I don't have any good explanations as to why we retread it every season. I have no
Yeah,
explanations for that.
it's been
But-
years now.
So I have a theory that Melisandre is one of the people that commits one of the treasons against Daenerys. And in the books, we already have, like, to some extent, some connection for Melisandre with the Unsullied. I think it's two of her brothers, right, are among
Yeah.
the Unsullied. So she has somewhat, even though we never see her communicate with them, like, somewhat of a personal stake. So it could be that they're trying to create that same personal stake for Melisandre with Dany's soldiers by having this romance
For love.
with Grey Worm. Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Mhm.
That would see. They have this scene in season 4 where they cut it that Melisandre is like saying, "I will never betray you, Daenerys, never,"
Yeah.
and it's on the deleted scenes.
Well, that scene's in the books too.
Yeah. I had this great theory last year that Melisandre was going to turn out to be the Harpy, but they didn't do it.
It comes back to the characters laying out plans on the screen again.
Yeah.
If someone says "never betray me" and the other person goes "yes," they're gonna get betrayed at some point.
Grey Worm, we all know is lacking. Is well,
Pillar and stones.
right.
He's
And
castrated.
Melisandre's shown up, And Melisandre is very good at bringing things back, resurrecting things. No, I'm just hoping Melisandre can res Grey Worm's Grey Worm, you know, and get him back to...
There it is, lady and
Have
gentlemen.
you found a way to integrate Volcano Dick into the show?
I think it's time for TV to
Honestly,
reach this point.
They've got a trifecta of eunuchs, though. They've got Grey Worm, Varys, and Theon. You know, they could all...
The 3 heads of the dragon?
He's gonna casterly rock hard.
That's a different kind of head.
of the dragon.
Wow.
I'm just glad that they had 2 scenes in this episode. One where Melisandre is a cunning linguist. And one...
Hey!
Here we go.
Wrap it up.
Now, speaking of the King's Landing, if you know, we get reintroduced to Randy Randall Tarley and his son Dickon. Randall Tarley pops up in King's Landing, I guess as the sole representative of surviving Reach Lords in the show who have names. Interesting that he didn't mention Heartsbane once. Like, didn't seem concerned.
Yeah. Are they just like hiding that? Like they lost their sword? Like they're just going to deny it ever happened?
Sam's like 30 minutes away.
Maybe the sword didn't reply to D&D, and so they're ghosting it again.
Hashtag where's
The
Ghost,
sword wasn't
hashtag
available.
Wolfwatch 2017.
Yeah, they didn't have the budget for the sword. Do you think Sam... This is getting ahead of ourselves to Old Town, but just bear with me for this one brief tangent. Do you think Sam's going to give Jorah Heartsbane? Since Jorah lost Longclaw, like his family's Valyrian steel sword, maybe Sam will be like, look, I don't know how to use a sword. Now that I've cured your grayscale, here's a good sword for you.
Why
Maybe
not?
he like touches his shoulders with it and that cures the grayscale.
He stabs him. He's Nissa. There we go.
Or he's
Anyway.
he's giving him the sword to use as a trading card to from when he meets up with Jon eventually.
Perfect.
He's like, take the sword and go trade it for your family sword. Just continually
There we go,
barter until you get your thing.
It's a great post on this. This is an old post. It's great. It's by a user who changed his username, but it's on the subreddit. It's called "What Would a Song of Ice and Fire Be Like If Every Single Fan Theory Turned Out to Be True?"
Oh God.
And it's absolutely
I remember
gold.
that.
In
I
it, he has
remember
this
Yeah.
this scene where everybody's swapping swords at the
Yes.
end so that they end up with their family
Yes.
sword. It's brilliant.
Oh, man.
We're gonna link it. Everybody should check it out. It's probably the funniest thing I've ever seen. Oh, it was by Francis Flute was the guy's name on the sub.
Amazing.
Francis Flute.
It's my favorite post on the sub.
So anyway, Randall and Jamie.
I'm sorry, King's Landing. I totally messed this up. King's Landing. Here we
That
are.
everything that Cersei is like complaining about Dany and Aerys doing are things that like she has done or that the Lannisters have ordered the mountain to do.
I liked how they framed it so the mountain was just barely in shot when she was talking about the crimes of Daenerys and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So he's like hulking right there.
The burning and the raping
Yeah.
and the pillaging, and it's like,
I mean, her argument is true, though. In the mindset of the Westerosi, like,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
an effective argument. I mean, yeah, Cersei did the same things, but it's like, well, if they're already thinking and that they're scared of Cersei because she blew up the Sept, well, imagine what it would be like if there were thousands of Dothraki wandering around the countryside. Like,
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
that's a lot worse.
yeah, but if her argument is, if you shouldn't follow this queen because she's brutal, says the queen who just blew up the Sept.
Better the devil, you know.
I just
Which
kind of
is
imagine
apparently
like
not a secret.
yeah. Apparently
Yeah,
everyone
how
knows.
is-
I like that.
How is there not a constant riot in King's Landing right now? Like,
I don't
shouldn't-
know.
She's gonna blow you up.
Totally, yeah.
Maybe the Sparrow movement was, it had run its course at the point in time, and it had pissed a lot of people off, and so people were just like, I hate the Sparrows now.
Yeah, they were kind of being buzzkills a lot, especially with like their throwing
Yeah.
beer out, closing the brothels,
The wine,
Yeah.
yeah. So maybe people just weren't, they were just upset with them as they were with Cersei.
They didn't like
This is
change. They
fine.
were like,
Yeah, no one likes change.
I was also thinking about how Cersei's probably sending out ravens to everybody saying like all the terrible things about Dany. I imagine Dany like sending out all these letters defending herself, and she just tells that the mirror and he's not, explains herself.
If she can finish the letters.
She has to introduce Barristan actually to sort of resolve the letters a little bit. I've seen some people saying something I agree with, which is that I think the scene with Jaime trying to win Randall over is gonna be in the books, John Connington or someone like that trying to win Randall over.
Oh,
Like it's gonna be someone trying to win. I saw poor Quentin saying that, and I always tend to agree with what he says. So blindly, without any critical thinking whatsoever. But I think that's probably a pretty close translation. Maybe it'll be Mathis Rowan in the books, maybe it'll be Randall Tarley, but like that, someone going to persuade the Reacher lords to win over them.
Yeah, Jeff and I have talked about this before, and it's that the way Randall is set up, especially, they don't talk about it much in this version of the show, but how Mace takes credit for the Battle of Ashford so heavily in the show, or in the books, parallels the way that General Gates in the American Revolution took credit for the Battle of Saratoga and spurned Benedict Arnold, which eventually led Benedict Arnold to becoming a traitor to the American cause. So I don't know if that's really where George got this all from, but it feels like it's set up for him to turn cloak.
Yeah, I could totally see Randall Tarley, especially in the books, backing Fagon, because that's another reason why this whole thing strikes me as strange, because Randall Tarley was a loyalist during Robert's Rebellion. Like, he backed the Targaryens. Yeah. I also wanted to bring up this interesting post, since something that we like to talk about here at the Quill and Tankard is those aspects of how the show is made, or like, and user change shapes. This is an interesting flare. Sorry, I want to point out this flare. This flare says, rate your Uber boat driver Gendry. Anyways, user change shapes has a post called The Framing of Randall Tarley. The post says, since Randall Tarley's intentions are still arguably ambiguous, I really enjoyed how 99% of the time he was on screen, half of his face was in shadow. I thought it was a brilliant yet simple, subtle touch of characterization. Here are some examples of these shots. And we've spoken before about how when Ned was a prisoner, you see that his face becomes clouded in shadow, which shows him being somewhat taken in by the politics of King's Landing. In these shots of Randall Tarley, his face is half in shadow, but a lot of Jaime's is in light, so I don't know what that means about Jaime, but it shows that we don't know Randall Tarley's intentions.
Go, Sam.
I think if we're talking half his face covered in light, half his face covered in darkness, we're talking about a duality, correct?
Oh,
Cartesian.
What kind of duality?
Cartesian duality.
Cartesian dualism.
Everyone, listen to Maester Monthly, episode 6.
Everyone in Game of Thrones is lit this way. They have it on 5 of the season posters for all the characters.
That's true.
Sir Pounce is lit this way.
Sir Pounce is a nuanced character of Cartesian dualism.
Sir Pounce has I don't trust him.
You know, they couldn't get Sir Pounce back on the show because the actor refused to sign a contract.
This is like the 7th Sir Pounce. It's getting ridiculous.
A light source from one direction, it's kind of inevitable that, one side of things is going to be light.
Yeah, I just like the idea.
They use that natural lighting a lot. Candles and daylight and all that.
Nice.
So So then comes a scene where Qyburn leads Cersei down into the basement and shows her his scorpion.
The finest maesters in King's Landing have been slaving day and night in blacksmiths to build one scorpion, to take on 3 dragons.
It's so mundane.
We've got this.
I'm pretty sure that on Euron's fleet, he has like those fire bolts that were being shot around were just that, right? On every ship.
Like, is that really a big innovation in universe?
It's like he took her into the basement to show her that he invented the sword.
Both sides, they're sharp.
Yeah, see,
it can shoot a bolt 30 yards into aged archaeology, like history objects that are completely priceless.
Yeah, have they not seen Arrested Development? That stuff's fragile.
I just realized, I think it was Mylod doing a meta thing of like...
The Hobbit?
No, Cersei and Qyburn were destroying beautiful art with a hacky mechanism they thought up.
Wow.
Oh, man.
Can we see any parallels?
Wow.
Who else destroys beautiful art with a hacky
Tell us how you
mechanism
really
they
feel,
claim
Sam.
to have invented? Jesus.
Where did they hurt you? Can you please point out on the script where they hurt you?
We're going to get Mylod on for next test.
Mylod, do Chapo.
I thought this was going to be such a bigger reveal. It's just like one scorpion. Like maybe if they had like a netting in between them, or like you could shoot like 3 at once. It was just like, Qyburn, what the hell are you doing? This wasn't
even painted with flames or anything.
Yeah.
It's just...
Why wasn't Cersei's crown on it somewhere?
No, it's true.
Or like Qyburn's face, like his little a face with like a sunburst behind it. It's like, yeah,
But
Qyburn, seal of quality, guaranteed.
We are working on a solution.
You just know this is because of the show, though, even though the improbability of hitting one of those dragons in mid-flight, it's absolutely going to happen. Like, this is definitely going to
Well, it
happen.
happened
Like
in,
the Hobbit!
It happened to
Yeah.
Vagar or Meraxes, or whichever one it
Meraxes.
was.
They shot
in
it out of the
Dune.
sky. That was something
Yeah.
else. But it's absolutely going to happen no matter how ridiculous it sounds. They're going to shoot one out of the sky in the eye.
Yeah, absolutely.
I said it before the season started because last year they had Rickon get longbowed at like 1,000
Yep.
yards. This season they're gonna have like one crossbow bolt fly up and hit a dragon at like 3 miles away in a small dot in the
Well, they
sky.
had similar things
It's
at the
gonna
wall.
just like hit that exact spot.
Yeah, exactly. George R. R. Martin makes that same
Braun
Yeah.
of the
that
Blackwater.
too.
That's a
No-
bad one.
Yeah.
I did like the parallel with Cersei and the giant ballista thing, and Joff and this crossbow.
Oh, I didn't think
Mm.
that. That's nice.
That's a great observation, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cersei even kind of has Joff's haircut.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
Yeah, the whole family has the same haircut.
Like son, like mother.
I feel like they should have extended the metaphor, and when they shot the crossbow, it should hit another beloved character and killed them right there for no reason. That would have been great.
Or they could have used to shoot through a person first to show that Qyburn is bad, because Qyburn is like innocent in the show almost.
Yeah, right.
He's just
He's
like a
very
mad
affable.
He
scientist.
doesn't.
He's just weird, but he's not
Yeah.
evil. Whereas in the books, he's like ripping people's
yeah,
nipples
he's-
off left, right, and center, and just.
Yeah, he's Joseph Mengele.
Well, we talked about one lunatic maester, so let's talk about all of the other lunatic maesters based out of the Citadel in Old Town.
Something that's kind of struck me with, it's what is it, Ebros? How do you say his name?
Slughorn?
Slughorn.
Yeah, well, it's to do. I wonder if the casting at any level, because he played Slughorn in Harry Potter, was meant to kind of synergize with how Sam's scenes are kind of Harry Potterish, and that they're they're looking at books, and he's doing magic behind the back of the maesters or the professors or whatever, going to draw on that.
Yeah.
I get a very Harry Potter vibe from it.
Absolutely. I feel like they did that on purpose. Like, they're like, great, let's get a Hogwarts professor in here just to tie it together.
Apparently, the maesters have like a ethics board. I mean, obviously they do because they kick Qyburn out, but they're not willing to try this treatment for grayscale.
Yeah. Well, Jorah's insurance didn't cover it, actually, was the problem.
Yeah. Gotta pay up those premiums.
Yeah.
Did anyone else feel like sort of a bait and switch on this? Like, Sam talked so much about dragonglass, and it turns out he's just gonna cut it off. I thought it was gonna be like,
Yeah.
I thought he was gonna be like
Yeah.
sprinkle dragonglass on it, or like make like a paste of it or something weird like that. It's like, oh, you're just gonna try and cut it off?
You're just gonna flay him.
Like, no one's ever thought about doing that.
He could stab him through the heart with it.
Yeah, that's what I was expecting, like the others.
That would fix it, right? I mean,
I have a theory.
Oh,
Sam's gonna end up getting infected with grayscale now, like it happened to Maester Pylos.
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
And they're gonna have to. Then he's gonna like really look at his books because he's like scared and stuff. And then he's gonna discover the dragonglass cure that he had skimmed over, because you're supposed to read the whole world book. You're supposed to read the whole history of ice and fire. And you're supposed to see that dragonglass can help cure grayscale. And then he's going to run off with Jorah to Dragonstone to get dragonglass, because now Sam is now afflicted and he has to leave the Citadel. And that's a way for him to get out of there. And so there's a route. Maybe?
Yes, yeah.
And then we get Dany and Jorah to meet up again? Oh, finally.
Yes.
It's been like a season since we saw that.
But yeah, it seems like Sam wasn't even like trying to take care of himself. He's like, oh wait, infected person, touch this cask, OJK, I'm gonna take a giant swig. I'm like, Sam, you idiot.
He was wearing a lot of robes and gloves.
Well, he took the swig first, didn't he?
I thought Jorah touched it a little bit and then Sam took it back and then took a swig. I don't remember, but
Oh,
either way, I
don't-
was
maybe.
like,
Yeah.
Sam, you idiot. This is how diseases spread.
They didn't have that typical what you would expect. Sam would like fumble with his tools and like accidentally, whoa, like grab on Jorah's shoulder and be like, oh no.
And smash his face into the grayscale.
Yeah, I like rub up against it.
He accidentally makes out with Jorah. What? I thought it was interesting between this episode and the last episode. HBO usually trades on having really graphic sex as a thing, but in these last two, they've really gone up for the disgusting factor. Maybe that's like their new strategy for getting people to talk about it, because everyone I talked to talked about the Sam sequence from the last thing. That was the first thing they said.
I'm going to say that it has to come with Dan Weiss and David Benioff reading a lot of Civil War history stuff recently in the past couple years, and they're like sucked into like the disgusting nature of the Civil War and the unclean hygiene.
Battlefield
and,
amputation.
that
That's a
sort
good
of
call.
thing.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that's why it's in here.
User Eric Savubi? I'm not sure about my pronunciation of that one. Hats off to Vebui for his post about Jorah's sword, which, because I saw a few people kind of confused about what was going on here, about how in the background it had the sword in the shots where Jorah was talking about his affliction and all that. And he brings up the idea that we were talking about a bit earlier about how Jorah might eventually get Heartsbane from Sam, you know, the whole trading card kind of thing. And then users in the comments talk about how they got the reading, and this is what I got too. The top comment is from Schrodinger's Niesel, who says, I understood it as a hint that Jorah would choose suicide over joining the Stone Men in Valyria.
Yeah.
That's what I took.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that's what
Yeah,
Ebros
for sure.
was saying to him.
It's
like
Yeah.
a gentleman's courtesy kind of thing.
But yeah, so that was an interesting discussion. And another thing relating to this whole Sam stuff was a post by user Scout Desk entitled Maester Samwell and Deus Ex Machina, talking about how he's citing Archmaester Pylos' research, or he or she, this user is taking issue with how Sam is kind of in that Harry Potter style, coming up with a cure so quickly after all these other maesters haven't got there successfully without dying yet. Is this a story thing, or is it a product of how the show is ramping up the pacing so much to try and get through story now that they don't have many hours left? Or is it both?
Maybe it's because it's not a cure and he's just going to catch grayscale.
Yeah, I see Sam as more like
There's a reason why the Maesters said not to do it.
Well, I highly doubt John Connington is going to go down to the Citadel and get cured by Sam in the books. So
no.
I think it's quite different at this point.
I also see Sam trying to cure Jorah as more of a Hermione move than the Harry Potter move, and it's like the time that Hermione messed up the Polyjuice potion and turned into a cat. So maybe this is about Sam getting grayscale.
I mean, I think in terms of the comparing it to like the Winds of Winter and all that, what's happening here is they needed Sam to be doing something kind of illicit under the noses of the Maesters. And in the books, that'll be the Faceless Men stuff. In the show, they were like, all right, let's just have him do illegal medical procedures on the side for money or whatever.
I think it works fine in the show's context. In the connection to Gior, that works quite well.
Yeah.
There's also the Sam name drops Castle Black earlier in the scene, the first scene to Ebro, or whatever unnamed Maester's name is, because they won't say Ebros in the show for I don't know why.
They want you to think it's Marwyn.
Yeah, maybe.
Marwyn baiting.
But anyway, he says Castle Black, and Jorah doesn't respond at all until later. Sam said, I guess maybe Jorah in that moment is just so lost in like learning that he only has 6 months to live. But okay, if he has 6 months to live, he doesn't need to take his life now. Well, he has 6 months he can still be sane to help see Dany through to the Iron Throne, which he could find a way to help assist her in that. But he decides to sit down and he writes this letter. And nothing says love like writing a letter to your lover that's signed by her title rather than her actual first name.
Khaleesi.
That's true.
I feel they only did that as just a callback to who he
used
is.
to say
like,
Khaleesi all the time.
Remember, it's the Khaleesi man.
Yeah, but like if you don't sign it by somebody's title, like, no, dear product specialist.
Well, the only other relevant comment, I think, in that user's thread was by auto moderator, and that was, I'm a bot and this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this subreddit if you have any questions or concerns. And that really changed my thinking
I have
on
some
the matter.
concerns. Okay, speaking of people who are just complete robots with no personalities speaking stock phrases we've given to them, how about Jon Snow, huh? How about our king in the north?
It's like that Varys and Dany thing on the boat again, where conversations aren't happening in between the episodes. Like, why do they never talk in private properly?
They did. They talked first with Davos. They were like doing their small council thing, and then Jon gets into the thing. It's like he gets swept up in the emotion. He's like, Dragon Glass. I gotta show off. He's like Vince McMahon out there.
This is what got him stabbed.
Yeah.
It's both of them though. It's not just Jon. Not only does Jon, they have their little powwow first. And then immediately they go back to doing the same thing that they talked about, like, we need to be smarter. why even have that scene then if you're going to have them do the same thing over again?
Yeah, right, exactly. A generous reading of that, the least generous reading is obviously the show writers don't actually care about developing Jon and Sansa's relationship, they just want more dramatic moments. But the most generous possible reading of it is that Jon is just like a fundamentally broken person who can't help himself in these situations and is just not at all interested in actually working with people anymore and is detached from the world of the living. And that's why he's not talking to Sansa and all that. That is kind of headcanon-y because there's not a lot in the show to explicitly back that up. But I think if you're looking at it as generously as possible, you could say, this is about Jon making the same mistakes over and over again because he can't help himself, and that's just how he is.
We specifically pushed this off until you were here to help deliver your own post.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
But how is Jon, written in this season so far?
Yeah, so Jon, the conflicts that he's facing, quote-unquote conflicts, are all really similar to the conflicts he's faced most of the past, 3 or 4 seasons, which is where he knows something that the audience knows is objectively right and true. The others are coming, they're the real threat. The audience knows this, Jon knows this, so he's obviously correct. And then he's pitted against someone who disagrees with his ideas for whatever reason, whether that's sort of racism angle with the wildlings or Sansa's pushing for revenge against the Umbers and Karstarks. It's always someone who's pitted against him, even though we know Jon is the one who's objectively right, and so this other person gets to look stupid so that Jon looks smart. It's exactly the same scenes we had at Castle Black, with Jon standing up in front of the Night's Watch guys, making a speech about how we have to do these things for the good of all men, and then some asshole stands up and is like, but I don't like other people. And we have to go, but Jon is our one true hero. He knows what he's talking about here. And it's the same thing. Yeah,
and he brings up the stuff like, I was in the Night's Watch.
Why did you desert the Night's Watch, Jon?
Why aren't you in the Night's Watch? Tyrion also gets that letter and he's like, Jon is now king of the North. Why isn't Jon still in the Night's Watch?
Why isn't Jon in the Night's Watch? Why not Sansa?
Yes, Sansa was supposed to be the heir to begin with, because that's why Tywin made the marriage for me. Why isn't she the Lady of Winterfell now?
Strange theory. Does anyone outside of the people in the North even know Sansa is there? Because, Hot Pie doesn't
Cersei
mention
knows.
her being there? Okay, I'm just wondering if, they're trying to keep it a secret?
I don't think it's general knowledge.
Do they talk to Tyrion about Sansa later?
I don't think she comes up at all,
No.
does she?
No.
She brings him up, but it doesn't go the other way. Tyrion doesn't think...
Okay, yeah.
I just want somebody in one of those halls to be like, didn't you die? How are you here?
Just in general, why is he here?
He doesn't even go here.
It seems like everyone in the series just takes the idea that dragons exist now as this foregone conclusion for some reason when they're these mythical beasts that have died out.
But recently.
Yeah, shout out to Rupert Vansittart, who plays Jon Royce. His reaction in this episode to learning about Jon's speech that there are dragons still alive and Jon is going to go down to get them. His reaction at this moment is just so hilarious. It's like, oh my god, Jon, what are you doing? It's like an implied facepalm moment. It's beautiful.
I do think at least that helps with our critiques of Jon, why aren't you talking to people? At least in the context of the first episode where we're all like, Jon, you should talk to people about your plans. This way it actually puts the onus on Jon because he kind of talked to them and then he decided to switch everything up at the last minute in front of everyone and not discuss it. And everyone's like, what? We talked about this. What are you doing? And then everyone else...
Except Davos.
Yeah, and everyone else in the council, Northern Court, is all like, Jon, you can't leave. So...
He even loses Lyanna Mormont.
Yeah, even Lyanna Mormont.
The letter that he gets from Daenerys is hello, I am an exiled princess that has come to return to my claim to the throne. I have come with an army of Unsullied and Dothraki and 3 dragons. If you just come south and bend the knee, all your wishes will be fulfilled and come true, and I will help you in your fight against the Great Other.
Worst Tinder intro ever.
I mean, it's
Swipe left.
It's like the Jalabhar Zoe,
yes.
like the exiled prince.
So does everyone in Winterfell think that Jon is falling for a phishing scam? Yeah, like
Everyone does think that.
Yeah, he's gonna email his bank account number.
By Raven.
From the Lord's perspective, they're right. Jon is like falling for something, but because we're the viewer, it's like objectively.
Exactly. We
just see that Jon is the one who can see the light, but all these other people are like dumb idiots because they can't like randomly guess this stuff is true. Like Jon's really gullible.
Does anyone else think that they should have sent Sansa down to talk with Dany and let Jon stay in the north? Because Sansa is not going to
like Catelyn going to the Baratheon brothers.
Right.
Whoa!
Because Sansa's not going to be able to do anything if the White Walkers advance. Right? I mean, I guess, I don't know. She saved the Battle of the Bastards, so what do I know? But that's not her role in this. She could be diplomatic, I mean, she's, I guess, technically kind of still married to Tyrion. Like, there's political connection there. Like, I don't see why Jon has to go himself.
There's really no reason.
Dany did send for Jon specifically. She sent for him to come and bend the knee. So... I mean, he could send Sansa. He could do that, but like... Yeah.
But everyone sends for them to bend the knee, and then they send an envoy.
Right.
Rob brought an army last time. I get why they did it just because they're the two stars of the show, and you want to see them finally interact, but they've set it up so Brienne and Davos are both with Jon. Why are they not the perfect people to send? They're right there. Brienne isn't doing anything.
Is a perfect person to send. I mean, like...
Both of them,
He's used to he's not only that, Davos has somewhat of a relationship if Dany is even trying to get like the other lords in the islands around Dragonstone, right? Because I mean, assuming that they even still have those lords there, like Davos has that relationship with them.
A mystery.
Both of them have credibility in the region. This is who you send.
Yeah.
You don't send Jon personally.
Like, he's literally the only person who thinks that.
I like that he is a dumbass who does stupid things, though. Like,
he's our dumbass.
I don't know. I mean, it's
the hero we need.
Kind of better than him having, like... So I feel like sometimes with stories, authors write in characters... They'll write a problem into the story, and then they'll write a character who knows exactly how to solve that problem the best possible way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it is kind of nice sometimes to have a character who's a dumbass who does stupid things and doesn't solve problems very well.
But he's going to ninja his way out of it, because Jon Snow.
His plot
exactly.
Armor will
that being
him.
said, Jon's obviously the hero, so he's not going to end up.
I just wish it were clearer that he's being a dumbass, like instead of him being portrayed.
Yes,
I thought that they pre-wrote Lyanna Mormont actually turning on him. That was like, oh, if she's against this idea, then this is really bad.
That's a good point. She's the audience fave. So
I think the main reason they did this is they just want to have an interaction between Jon and one of the dragons, and then wink at the audience about it.
Yeah.
Like,
Jon,
they're not going to tell us.
They're
not going to drop R plus O equals J yet, because apparently everybody hasn't figured it out yet. They just want to do this again.
Did D&D ever frame Jon negatively in those inside the episode things you get after?
Really.
No.
They always talk about him as like, the one guy who knows what he's doing and everyone else needs to listen to him. Which is why I need to stop watching the inside the episodes, because D&D just talk about the show on like the most surface level, and it's frustrating when you want to read more into the show, but it's clear they're not writing that into it.
No themes.
So any reading has to be done independent of their intent.
Do they see themselves as Jon in writing the show?
I was thinking that just now, and like you guys said
and
that.
Tyrion.
Yes. Because Jon is arming the women of the North, and D&D have the great feminist table scene, They totally... Yeah, oh my god. Wow.
Oh, man.
They also see themselves in the meta of the story, like when they wrote Alistair Thorne on top of the wall and the Watchers on the Wall, and he's giving this speech about not being afforded the ability to listen to everybody, or you like lose your way and you don't, or you've lost and you're confused and you have to stick the course sort of thing. So yeah, I guess the invitation is out there, Dan and David Cogman or Dave Hill. Like, we can give a better interview, I think, than BuzzFeed. If you guys want to come on, like, we'd be glad to have you. I don't think you would, but Yeah, it's extended.
We're never getting them on the podcast.
Never. Remembering the scene with Jon in the hall again, and once again they did a subtle hint that like, oh, Jon's a Targaryen, because they had, I think it was Jan Royce say like, you can never trust a Targaryen, and then they cut to Jon looking like sad. I'm like,
Gormless.
Just do this. just say he's Rhaegar's kid. It's fine. We get it.
What about Brandon plus Ashara equals?
I don't know what you're talking about.
To the crypts.
Yeah, to the crypts.
To the wall.
Till the Starks drip down the wall. I think Kit Harington's acting in the crypts was the best I've seen him act in the show, like hands down. Just his face. I don't know what it was about that scene with him and Littlefinger. Maybe he does disdain really well, but that was convincing acting, I found.
I thought it was interesting, and especially the parallels between when he eventually grabs Littlefinger and chokes him against the wall. It's like, oh, it's like Ned and Kat again. That was a nice little tie back to when that happened the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if, like, not only was that Ned-like, maybe when he was looking at Ned and brooding and thinking it's very Rhaegar-like.
Ooh.
To just be, like, among dead people as Rhaegar would go to Summerhall and just lie there and, like, around dead people.
Weep.
And, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Play his
think.
I don't think anyone was thinking that deep about it, but it makes sense.
I mean, I wasn't thinking about the Summerhall thing. I was just thinking, it's kind of like Rhaegar, very brooding.
Mm-hmm.
Melancholy kind of guy. Love. If only Jon could play the harp. One thing I thought about this scene is might be the first time this has ever happened, but I sympathize with kind of Littlefinger here. I think Jon is being a very bad lord in this scene. Littlefinger saved his ass. Even if he hates Littlefinger and Littlefinger did terrible things to Sansa, you need him because Jan Royce is not on your side right now. He's publicly spoken out against you twice. Either find a way to work it out with Littlefinger or get rid of him and then work with Jan Royce. Choking him and throwing him against the wall is the worst of every option available.
In terms of this scene itself and what this season's kind of doing on a broader level, I really liked how it mirrors Lord Snow from season 1. Framed the same way, because this season already in its 2 episodes has done so much stuff like that. We had in the premiere the staging of Sansa and Jon, a raven from King's Landing in Winterfell, and it was, shot and blocked the same way. We'll probably dive in later to Arya's line, reflecting another Arya line from season 1, which
quote unquote,
I think D&D even said was an intentional reference and callback.
Well, they had to explain it.
Yep.
Yeah. Dany saying Jon sounds like quite the man, being like when Aemon said Dany sounds like quite the woman.
No.
I like how the show at this point has got, 60 plus hours behind it. It's got enough content that it can meta reference itself to make its own points now. This is something I love when shows go on for a long time, is that they can kind of spin and reframe themselves to make points around the characters. I always find it really fun.
I agree, yeah.
That's a good point.
They do a lot to set up that parallel in the crypts. Like, not only do we start out with Jon staring at Ned, so now we suddenly remember Ned. Then we have Littlefinger. And then Littlefinger says, yeah, I supported Ned. And then you remember Ned and Littlefinger's relationship. And then Littlefinger starts talking about, I really care about Sansa. And he starts talking about Kat. And then we remember the relationship of, like, how all three of them met. So, like, they do a lot to set up that parallel and to drive that idea home.
This is the elegant in-story way to do things like that, rather than just shoving a scene in the previously on saying, guys, remember this?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
I also thought it was...
At the same time, though, when I was watching this scene, all I could think of is the same thing that Michael's been talking about, where Jon is going to be objectively right, even though he really shouldn't be. Like, all of his fears for Littlefinger in the context of the show don't make a whole lot of sense. As far as, like, this is a guy who risked his entire house and position to come up here, and he saved you when you were about to die, and the way you thank him is by shoving him up against the wall. Yes, he says the stuff about loving Sansa, which is really strange and creepy, but at the same time, it's so undiplomatic to do that, where I think Littlefinger, in Jon's position, from a person in Jon's position, he should give Littlefinger a little bit of leeway, even if he's like a weirdo like that. And knowing that, trusting in Sansa too to take care of herself in this position is also something that is sorely lacking. It's like, it feels like Jon's written too much to, like, know what the audience knows and be objectively right, where he doesn't feel like a real person.
Well, he's not. He's a zombie.
Yeah, he's a firewhite.
That's true.
That's true.
That's what he really lost in his memories, how to That actually, like,
That's true.
communicate.
Did he ever know how to do that? Was that a thing?
He's like Dougie Jones from Twin Peaks.
Yeah, cool.
So in universe, is Littlefinger really that creepy in terms of Sansa?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, like, he was like wrong
saying that
to
to her
sell-
brother.
Forcing her to kiss him.
If you were politicking and you were trying to set yourself up with like a good marriage or something, then maybe you would go to the king, who happened to be the girl you liked's brother, and we're like, I really like your sister, and we kind of saved your butt with our army, so, hint, hint. I mean, like, I don't know.
I think it's delivery, not the content. He's saying it so scummy.
But
to
right,
Jon.
but I'm saying that Jon, like, again, with the fact that Littlefinger did kind of come up and save his butt, like, he doesn't have a whole lot of reasons to hate Littlefinger.
No, you're right. I
mean,
see what
he
you're saying.
doesn't he does,
Yeah.
but Jon doesn't know about them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I will
like
say
that
though
audience.
that Jon knows that Littlefinger married Sansa to Ramsay,
Yeah.
and
I think
he
that's
knows
the
the
way it is.
consequences of that. If that's the only thing he knows about Littlefinger, and then he also knows that Littlefinger brought this army, I mean, I don't know. I could see that being a determining factor in Jon viewing Littlefinger as a creepy perv. Also, you shouldn't interrupt someone while they're praying to their father and then like talk about how you love their sister so much. Like, there's a time and place for these things.
And you just don't go into the family crypt. That's like already pretty creepy too.
He doesn't
That's
belong
like
there.
that's like if I just like went,
That's true.
I don't know, to someone else's house and I just like wandered for some reason all
Into
the
the
way to
crypt.
like into
The
the
crypts,
crypt.
yeah. Everybody has a crypt.
Into like
to
everyone's
my
like
crypt.
into everyone's bedrooms for like no reason and just like Goldilocks, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
Goldilocks is pretty creepy.
If Littlefinger wanted to do it the right way, he'd have to, go see Jon in private and like, go
Jon's
down on
avoiding
one
him,
knee
though.
and be like,
Yeah.
can I want to make my intentions known?
He could do it the way that he did like during the councils in King's Landing, and he was like, there were councils and he was on those councils and he said, you should wed Sansa to me, and they were like, no. And they were like,
Yeah, but-
what about Lysa Arryn? No, he's like, well, he said, what about Lysa Arryn? And they're like, all right.
Jon never holds councils
Yeah,
in
there are
Winterfell,
no
so
councils.
how
That's-
exactly is he supposed
Yeah,
to
that's true.
speak with them?
He just goes to office hours or whatever.
Yeah, that's true.
And office hours
unless-
are not in the crypt.
Speaking of getting
Wildcard?
the
Damn.
things we want, how about some pie? Some hot pie.
Oh, hot pie. Yum, yum, yum.
What the hell?
Did you brown the butter first?
I'm gonna brown your butter.
Oh my, Michael.
He didn't say anything about the gravy.
Yeah.
Arya gave up on Nymeria.
Right, you can't give up on the gravy.
It's like in Amadeus. She should know you can't give up on the Wolfie.
I know the scene transition from the grayscale pus plucking to the pie eating upset some people, but I really like other shows going a bit sillier and more creative with the scene transitions this
Yeah.
year.
I thought it was entertaining.
It amuses me. I think it's funny.
That's fine with it.
It's a little suspect that she didn't hear about any political things at all from the Lannister soldiers.
Yeah.
But you gotta give this moment to someone like Hot Pie, like her finding about the Starks. You can't just give it to like a rando. I think it's important that it's someone she's connected to.
It's like everybody in Westeros knows everything that's going on everywhere except for the person who's trained in like
Yeah.
being an assassin.
It's
And
like
blending in.
And trained in learning secrets.
Right, like
Yeah.
it's like she just doesn't have service. It's like her cell phone's dead or something. Everyone else is getting like the alerts on her phone, like, oh, new king in the north, but not Arya.
I don't know about you guys, but I loved Hot Pie's his last line where it's like, I'm like you, I'm a survivor. Like that was,
Aww.
I don't know, I thought that
So he's dead, right?
plucked at the heartstrings.
I was hoping he was going to give her another wolf bread.
Oh.
In the morning after discussion threads, there's a comment from user AdmiralKird Jernsner.
oh my god.
And they were talking about, how they didn't see a lot of discussion about the scene between Arya and Hot Pie on the board. And they say that Arya seems so mentally effed up now, speaking like a zombie to her old
Yeah.
friend, who she hadn't seen in, years? Really highlighted the change that Arya had over the years, while her old friend is still the same. And the next comment after, to diss me, this user says she's cold like the Hound, and the Hound has become the show's conscience. And that they really like the way that she's changed.
I think
And that she showed it through the acting.
I like that comment, and what interests me is I feel bad saying this all about him all the time, but Maisie's such an order of magnitude better an actor than Kit that even though he's playing like a literal zombie, she's just like, oh my god, Jon Snow says, Arya's just kind of zombie-ish now because she's so flattened and dulled by all the traumatic stuff she's gone through. And Maisie plays that so well and so distinct from other ways she's played things that we can really tell that that's what she's going for. It's nice to be able to have faith in an actor to get story points like that across and know you're not just misreading or, you know, looking into things too much. Maisie's great.
Yeah.
I
And
agree.
I mean, Hot Pie asked, like, what happened, you've changed, which, like, highlights it, but I don't know, especially when you think about the scene of when they said bye, and then she's, like, almost crying while she's eating the wolf bread, and she's like, it's really good, Hot Pie, and there's so much emotion, and then compared to this, I just really love that scene. She's like, it's really good, and she's eating the wolf bread.
I thought it was interesting because in the last episode, they had her sit with the Lannister men, and sort of the implication of that scene was like, oh, she's like sort of coming back to humanity. But then they show her with Hot Pie. It's like, oh, I guess that scene didn't really do what we thought it did. It was just kind of like, maybe like that's a hope for the rest of the season, not like an actual change she's made in her personality.
Well, and even
Or just inconsistent characterization.
be
well,
too.
no, because even when she's talking to Hot Pie, she's still as cold and distant as ever. It's only when he brings up Jon Snow that she finally sort of comes out of it. So it's like whether she's talking to Ed Sheeran or Hot Pie, she is still, you know, laser focused on Cersei.
Yeah, they really didn't need the other scene now. In retrospect,
Yeah.
like if I was the editor, I would have cut the previous scene and just replaced it.
They do the same thing.
Like this.
It just one has Ed Sheeran in it. You could have put him in this episode if you wanted.
No, In at the Crossroads, even though In at the Crossroads, they originally were planning to have it as one of the little intro sequences
Yeah, it
to
just
start, but then
seems
they
so-
dropped it, and you still see In at the Crossroads on the map every
Yep.
single time as the camera pans past it, and I'm like, oh.
I love the Inn at the Crossroads.
And then she meets another old friend with Nymeria, who is, despite the line, Nymeria. That is Nymeria the direwolf. The producers confirm that's Nymeria the direwolf in that scene.
They use a lot of camera trickery in these shots. The direwolf almost appears to change size before your eyes.
I don't understand why they use CGI for the direwolves when they shot like all of the Lord of the Rings movies with like the people being real sized and not using any special effects at all. They just use perspective.
They use a wolf on like a green screen and then they superimpose it and change the size of it. And that's how they
But
do
how
it.
hard is that? That doesn't justify never seeing the wolves. Where is Ghost?
He's on. Apparently,
hashtag
he's on
where's
another
Ghost?
another country, and that's actually the reason why we don't see Ghost, because it's harder to transport wolves, and he's not in the same country where Kit Harington is filming a bunch of these scenes.
They use a green blob on a stick with Kit Harington.
Mm-hmm.
So,
You mean to do Kit Harington's acting?
like, they never actually have him stand in front of a wolf.
Yeah, I mean, the direwolf is superimposed on after the fact because they film all the wolves in Canada and then marry the two up later. I guess because wolves are hard to get to act on screen with human actors.
Well, they need to supersize the wolf. So.
That too, yeah. You just drag the wolf's window and you know, expand it a little bit, and that's it.
Yeah. It looked kind of weird to me because, like, the wolf that they have for acting in that scene, it, like, I would expect, like, the wolf to go up to Arya or something, or them to have more of a bonding moment, but they just kind of do a close-up on the wolf's eyes, and you can't really tell, like, what the wolf is experiencing or feeling. It's just, like, this is the shot we have, guys.
Right.
We're going to put it in.
I mean, yeah, you don't get like the wolf licking her face or anything like that because they can't do that.
Yeah. Maybe they tried and it didn't work. I don't know.
I feel like they've never tried with the wolves.
I feel like the intention of this scene was to be a cold shoulder thing. Like,
That's true. Yeah.
this wolf, I think, tremendously delivered on what Mylod was asking of it in wolf noises.
It emoted very well.
Speaking of emoting very well, I think Maisie Williams did to the extent where they should have cut her last line of dialogue because it only muddied the waters.
Yeah.
What was that line?
That's not you.
That's not you.
In the inside the episode where they explain that it's a very complex callback to season 1 where she says to Ned, "That's not me," when he suggests that she could grow up to be a normal girl like all the other girls. That doesn't count as a callback. I'm sorry. Like a 3-word sentence with 2 pronouns in it is not a callback.
Especially when you're not even using the same pronoun.
Yeah.
It worked for me. This season's already been callbacking so much, my mind's been in season 1 mode. Like, they had the callback to episode 3 with Ned, John, and Ned putting Littlefinger to the wall. Like, I see what they're going for with it. I don't think they're like miles and miles off the mark.
But how many different interpretations are there of that sentence? That's not you. So that's not you as in that's not Nymeria?
Isn't like some other giant-ass wolf?
Right,
that's
exactly.
How it reads
it's lady. No.
to the audience,
like,
I think. Yeah.
That's not you, like, you're not going to come with me. That's not who you are, which is what the D&D intended, apparently. That's not you, as in she's talking to herself. Like, you're going to go north. No, that's not you. You're this vengeance machine you should go kill. Like, what does it mean?
I think if they'd given Lady or Nymeria, if you insist, the Ned's line that preceded...
I'll give her, yeah. Perfect.
That's not you.
Is that what a wolf sounds like?
Speaks like
in a castle and you're going to marry a high lord.
All these wolves have cotton balls in their mouths.
Yeah.
It's
Just imagine Nymeria like Scooby-Doo.
Yes. Yeah.
It works in the context of if you remember that scene and what the callback is, but the problem is that there's a huge percentage of your audience that isn't going to remember that scene. And so in this moment where you're trying to make this connection, but because the wolf is shot in a way where it is going for a big cold shoulder from the wolf, that means that you don't have this connection where it's definitely set up to be this is Nymeria. Because you, as book readers also, were led to believe that Arya has this very strong connection with her wolf to where they would be bonded as like almost inseparable. So especially if you're coming from the books, it comes off very strange to have Nymeria just turn around, like not have any kind of bonding moment. When Arya's been like feeling and hanging out with Nymeria over in Westeros, even when she's in Bravos having these dreams.
Right.
What might have worked is if in, say, the scene with Hot Pie, Arya brought up, in expository style, something about Nymeria, or even better if they could somehow reference the Ned conversation so the line wouldn't come out of nowhere. I'm not sure how they could do that without being clumsy, but... Yeah,
Hot Pie could just say, like, so are you going to go back to Winterfell now because you were supposed to be like a...
Princess, you're a princess now, or whatever.
Yeah.
Arya's like, that's not me.
That'd be an elegant way to do it.
Even knowing the context of the line, though, that's not me. Is she going north or south now? After her interaction with the wolf... Is she going to choose to go north or is she going to choose to go south? Because
she's already going north.
She's already going north, but a lot of people are reading it as she's talking to the wolf. She's like, "Hey, let's go back to Winterfell." And the wolf's like, "Nah, I'm not feeling that." And she's like, "That's not you." Is it a reflection on herself, like going back to Winterfell and having this family? That's not you.
Yeah. Like, does Arya in that moment, because she realizes like having a pack isn't you, does she turn back around and decide to go to King's Landing? Yeah.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I think
I got that. Yeah.
And that's why it's a bad line and they shouldn't have had it in the scene.
Yes. There's so much tinfoil so you can do with this. Like,
it reminds me of the stuff with Donnie Darko and how a lot of people were saying like this is the greatest piece of cinematic achievement ever, but it requires like a pamphlet to understand it because it's shot in such a confusing way where it's like, oh, this is a really great callback, but a really great callback is very explicit in the way it's delivered and clear to the audience. Like the thing with Littlefinger and Jon in the crypts. That's very clear.
Right.
Yeah, they show.
This one is not.
Right.
And it's not good if it's unclear to the majority of your audience.
But someone was talking about how they think that Arya is going to go north and Nymeria is going to go south and take out Cersei.
Is it Feldman who talked about this with the Winds of Winter prologue about how he thought that the wolves might attack the Lannisters on their way to Casterly Rock with Jane. If
Jane Westerling.
If Arya goes north back to Winterfell, Nymeria takes her vengeance and goes south because one of the primary arguments for Feldman was that there's going to be a lot of blood from the Brotherhood Without Banners.
So that was mine.
Oh, that was yours? Oh.
That was my part.
Okay.
Because I had that conversation with Jeff on Facebook.
Okay. I'm sorry.
But we also covered this in Maester Monthly episode, like
Yeah, we
4.
covered this in Maester Monthly. I thought it'd be interesting because we see the Field of Fire coming. There's, from the trailers, what it looks like. If the dragons are burning lots of people and the wolves are starving, they might end up on the same battlefield with Jaime and Cersei and Tyrion if they're all there. The wolves might end up getting Arya's vengeance while she goes back north, and sort of a callback to the Worgen connection she's had from Braavos this whole time.
The reason Nymeria wouldn't go with Arya is because she didn't have a large enough budget with her. She's like, do you have a large enough budget? Do you have a large enough budget to afford me? No? Oh, that's not me. Sorry.
That's exactly what I said when the wolves left. Like, I turned to, like, my partner, I was like, so they didn't have the budget. Right when that scene ended.
I just think with the limited amount of time and the fact that they chose to even animate her at all, it'd be a shame if this was the only thing they did with her. If they had her show up in one of the battles, that'd be a really cool way and an actual reason for including her when they could have just had Arya keep going north. They didn't need to do that.
I think it's closure.
There's less expensive ways to do that.
That's not me. Like, they could have called back to the pack survives, the lone wolf dies and the pack survives or something, right?
Yeah.
Like, right now Arya is a lone wolf and winter is coming and Nymeria has this pack, and Arya could have been like, you know, the pack survives, like, I need to go back and find my pack.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Perfect. Nailed it.
This is now the second episode in a row where they've had like one extra line for her at the end of a scene.
They should have stopped. They would have been fine right there.
It's desensitizing me to the punchlines. They're like the boys who cried wolf, D&D, you know. I can only hear a gag so many times.
Oh my god.
Man.
They call the North remembers.
Speaking of the boy who cried wolf, Theon in the Narrow Sea?
What?
Yeah, it's narrow sea time, buddy.
Oh boy.
My favorite part of the episode.
Yeah, actually, same.
Yeah.
No, actually it wasn't. I didn't. Really?
Oh,
boy.
it was my favorite part of the episode.
I earnestly enjoyed it.
I like the sand snake scene. I thought that was kind of cute and funny. I thought that was funny.
There's also some cool foreshadowing for later what was going to happen to him, where Tyene says, like, I'll kill both of you. And it's like, oh yeah, they're the only two that die. Okay. That was a nice little setup within episode.
I bet she feels bad now.
But I knew Jessica Henwick was going to die because she has another project lined up. And she's been getting so much acclaim and, like, for that. And everyone's like, she's the best part of the show.
She is.
I thought she was pretty good as like a sand snake for what they gave her, but
Yeah.
they never gave her anything to begin with before. Same thing, like Tyene wasn't bad either.
Yeah.
I mean,
What I liked about that scene, Eliana, this was that Twitter thread that you shared.
At Motels on the Moon. We'll link that.
Yara's like cracking jokes about how Theon's her protector now, and Theon's super uncomfortable with that.
Oh, yeah.
And I think they did a good job writing Theon this episode because like he would be super uncomfortable with feeling responsible for somebody because he's so broken.
He did a lot of face acting.
Yeah.
Like, he was in the background in the Dany scene, and then he was, like, making disgusted faces during the scene, and then he was making horrified faces in the next scene, and then he was in the water.
Alfie Allen, what can you say?
Think
This
of
is
it.
great.
Yeah.
I thought, like, the thing with the Tyene teasing her two sisters, that the fact that Yara and Alaria were making Theon feel uncomfortable and that he was really uncomfortable with everything that was happening was another good foreshadowing to his eventual jump off the boat.
Alaria is definitely teasing Theon in this sequence, but I'm not so sure that there's a correct interpretation of where like Yara is definitely teasing Theon, because it's not as decisive as the teasing in the past. Part of the scene is written where Yara's like trying to protect Theon, where she's like rebuking Alaria like, he's not your servant. But then there's the lines about like, he's my protector. But by answering Alaria, Yara's like trying to protect Theon because he doesn't want to talk for himself. So Gemma's also kind of playing it like reluctant to tease Theon, where in Volantis before she was like hardcore doing it. She says specifically to Alaria again, like, leave him be. And then there's a shrug at the end of the sequence where Yara's like, is that a shrug of, are you still not with it, brother? Like, come on. Or is that a shrug of like, I'm sorry, like, I don't want to rebuke Alaria because I want sexy time, so can't you just at least understand that? But I'm sorry. What was the deal with the implied, like, peeing scene with the pouring the ale with the cinematography? Was that just like
urine? There's
Yes.
gag in
It's
there somewhere.
foreshadowing. Oh shit.
Oh. Does anybody want to say anything about Foreign Invasion?
It wasn't as bad as I felt like it was going to be based on the trailer.
Yeah. I feel like Foreign Invasion wasn't as bad of a line as some people are memeing it out to be. It's just a cheesy pickup line.
Yeah.
Like, it's good to have those in the show.
Yeah.
I love Euron.
Yeah, let's talk about the battle. So the battle.
Euron is fun in the show.
I burst out laughing.
Euron's arrival is absolutely hilarious.
It's fantastic. Can you imagine showing this to someone in 2011 when season 1 was airing? Like, it's so cartoonish and so hilarious. I'd love to see the reaction of what the show would become.
Yep.
He drops down on the top of this Corvus, as pointed out, because I had this post about it being like the chain cannon, whatever the thing in the front of the ship. No, it's an ancient. It's like used in the Roman era of like around 0 BC AD, of where they had this big like ramp that they put on the front of the ships, and they drop it down onto the decks to board into combat. And Euron, like standing there riding it down, it was probably my most favorite moment of that sequence, because it reminds me so much of that Doctor Strangelove moment where Major Kong rides the bomb into the end there, and he's just like
waving his
he's
cowboy
just loving
hat.
it. Yeah, exactly. He's just like, ah! It's like somebody adding some levity.
Apparently, so user, I think we've called them out before, Craw68. Craw. Talks about it being a Corvus and how the Romans used it specifically like in the First Punic War, and that it worked in the against the Carthaginians. And he says that one thing the show got very wrong was the conditions of the seas and the deployment of the Corvus, aka Crow/Beak. Not Corvus. Corvus. A Corvus was a severe problem during rough seas, and the Romans lost several fleets because of the problem, and many naval architects believed the Romans discarded the beak as soon as the seas got rough. They thought that was minor, and also that the lack of something else about the crow's nest. But it comes in an interesting thread that by user Weirwoody about how they kind of like that Euron's attack came out of nowhere, that there's no warning from the crow's nest, just a bang, because, Euron's ship is the silence that comes in out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's
absolutely.
In the response to my thread, there was a post by, I want to mention these people because they checked my facts and they deserve the credit for it. Sean White is my twin, pointed out that it's a Corvus, and then another person, Floss and Brust, came back and said there's actually a follow-on device to the Corvus called the Harpox. What's
a Harpox?
Show me the Harpox.
From when you lay with Tormund Giantsbane, you get the Harpox.
Anyway, it's like a scorpion, but it has a rope attached, and so they used it to lash onto the sides of ships. And really, like, it's pretty easy to understand, like, this device would not be very good in naval warfare because you're constraining everybody boarding a ship down onto a choke point where you could just flood that point with arrows and, like, you would be screwed. It's like the same thing in, like, D-Day when people would jump over the sides of the Higgins boats instead of going down the ramp because they would expose themselves to way more fire going down to the choke point like that. So, but it makes sense in the context of the episode. It fits in with Euron's character, and I thought it was very nice. I was surprised and liked it to see him on top of that and crush somebody below. He was just loving it.
You can tell the actor, he's having so much fun with the role. I just find it infectious, the energy of it. Thrones just gets so dismal and, down in the dumps with things.
Yeah.
That him just jumping around, having the time of his life and laughing and grinning as he's in the fights. It's so pulpy fun for what the show is now. I really
absolutely
am a fan of it. Do you guys like how he's kind of taken some Victorian elements?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
He didn't kick somebody off the ship wearing armor.
Yeah.
Which would have been a nice callback to Cersei.
There's still time.
The books, he kicks a guy in full plate off the ship. And it would have been a fun line, too. He's like, "You got too much armor on there, buddy." And then he kicks him off the edge of the ship. And he drowns, and you see him like, whoa, like wailing his arms in the water. Been great.
I think it's fun with how, like, if we structure the bosses of the show as, like, being Joffrey and Ramsay, and now Euron. Joffrey and Ramsay were so, like, actually, like, tough to watch because they were so sadistic and evil, and it was really disturbing the way they'd kill people and stuff. But Euron is just such a, like, he's a pirate, you know, he's so funny. Like, the brutality he's doing is, it's like such a pulp style that rather than trying to escalate Ramsay, it feels like they've gone in a whole other direction. That's a lot more fun.
I do like, though, that he pinpoints people's weaknesses in the still. He knows exactly how to mess with Yara and Theon. You know, in the moment, even on this ship in the middle of a battle, he's pushing Theon's buttons and stuff. And I think that's pretty bookish.
There's a thread up that kind of links to exactly what you're saying called ___ was not miscast by a user Starfall University. And it's an interview with the actor saying stuff like, the moment he leaves the room, he transforms into someone else. People like him are social chameleons. What if Euron would be different with every single person he's with? What if he was charming with Cersei, but when you meet his niece and nephew, he switches to a different tack and he goes full on brutal? All that kind of thing. I think it definitely has that character identifying trait, you know, still from the books, where he can kind of hone in.
Who wants to talk about the cinematography of this scene?
I think you do, Aaron.
I'm not really a fan of PJ Dillon's style and Mylod's way that they shot this, in that they have a really high shutter speed set on the camera, so everything appears very jumpy because all the motion blur is taken out. I think some of that is to aid in like these embers to make them really pinpointy, but at the same time, I think a lot of those were added in post, so I'm not entirely sure what's going on with that. Also, compared to like Blackwater or Watchers on the Wall, this sequence features a lot of quick, short cuts during it. Like the span when they first board the ship, it's a huge sequence of nothing but boom, 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 cuts. Like 8 cuts within a span of like 3 seconds. It's kind of insane. So despite the higher budget and the pyrotechnics and everything that they've got going on in the sequence, it looks less fulfilling than like the Watchers on the Wall and Blackwater, because Neil Marshall's style to me is just far beyond this style. This style is very Transformers-like. The other one is more traditional, and it's clear, and like you can see what's going on, and it's also engaging. So I prefer that it was shot more like Blackwater or Watchers on the Wall.
Well, in Watchers on the Wall, there were a lot of really long cuts where they were really showing off Jon's swordsmanship, right? I mean, like, it was... Yeah, but...
That's true, yeah.
In this, it's, you know,
Yeah, and even... Blackwater, like the long shots outside, like they're fairly long. The cuts are like 1 or 2 or 3 seconds long.
If I felt like defending Mylod, which you guys know I do all the time, I'd say you could take the climax of this scene. I think in the inside the episode, D&D even pretty much say it, is Theon's abandonment. You know, those little close-ups between the reactions between the Greyjoys. So if Theon's the crux of this scene, him leaving the ship and everything, you know, you could make the argument fast-cutting, disorienting, blah, 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 is all to put you in Theon's mindset, make you feel really overwhelmed and like you're having a panic attack. But, you know, I leave it up to you how
generous to be with that take,
Well, Theon's not really lost yet in this scene because you see him fighting in the battle, so maybe if they wanted to portray that, it should start out like smooth and then generally decayed as like stroby towards the end, but that's not how it's shot, so...
I do appreciate this comment by user Hickspy, where it says, Yara could have easily gained the upper hand if everyone would have just taken their shirts off.
True. Accurate.
If Ilaria had been able to get to second base, they could have...
They were working on it, right? And then you're on
exactly.
What'd you guys make of Theon's abandonment in that moment?
Maybe my perspective's colored because of that great Twitter thread from... that this is like a moment of strength for him, almost, because what was he gonna do? I guess he was either gonna set down his sword and be like, I give myself up, like, you know, don't kill her, I surrender, or he was gonna charge in and get them both killed, and instead he refuses to participate, basically, and like just jumps out of the game, which is
right.
Strong for him. I mean, that's not
the way it's portrayed, though, because he goes back into like the shaking the head thing and the thing with Ramsay where he's like torn. It's not like a moment of strength.
The inside the episode has D&D pretty much, I think, specifically calling it like a trigger, like a triggering thing. So stop thinking well until D&D can, you know, rid you of these notions.
It was definitely a PTS. It was definitely a PTSD moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and that's how it's shot and portrayed. And then Euron obviously starts laughing like the Joker when Theon jumps overboard. So it's shot and portrayed as Euron's triumph over Theon mentally.
Like you were saying earlier, if you want to take a very generous reading, you could say like, well, this is the only way to save Yar's life.
Yeah, exactly.
Acting, as many people have pointed out, really shows what they're doing. The moment you zoom into his face, he's no longer like trying to be like the Theon brother of Yara. His face in that moment is Reek.
Yeah,
that's
true.
how he's acting. He goes back to all those same motions, and I think that really comes through in that scene.
And there's a good way they can transition Theon out of the Reek mode once and for all. And there's a big theory in the books that Theon has a son. Because back in season, and it happens in the show too, back in season 2, Theon got on the ship called the Mirham, and he got with the captain's daughter on the way to the Iron Isles. And so if Sam and Jorah need to ride up to Dragonstone, they could have it be on the same ship, and then this could jolt Theon out of Reek permanently, and he could be like the Grey King he's always meant to be.
Yeah.
And the other part of this thing where I guess Euron is stab-proof in this episode?
Yeah.
What was going on there?
Bath salts.
Mylod 2.0. Mylod strikes back. Return of the Mylod.
He jumped on one of those Mario stars before hopping on the ship. He was impervious to all damage.
They replaced the Euron theme with do.
Yeah. Actually, that'd be a great fan edit if somebody did that.
The rainbows.
He also rid us of the sand snakes.
Yeah.
2 out of 3.
2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Ain't bad.
Killed, Obara fights with a spear, gets impaled. Nymeria fights with a whip, strangled, hanged,
I think, if anything, this episode really demonstrated that fighting with a whip is just rock stupid.
It seemed very bad on that ship.
Just what was she doing? Like snapping his face a little bit? That was it, right?
She's no diva.
Well, I mean, what? It does 1d4 damage, right?
Crack
I mean,
that whip. Yeah, it's 1d4 at best, and tripping is tripping's. They probably weren't even using grappling rules because that's so complex.
Yeah.
So
I guess Euron's going to follow through on his gift to Cersei. He's going to deliver her 2 very great gifts: the supposed queen of the Iron Islands and the woman who killed her daughter. That's pretty good. I didn't think he was going to be able to pull off any of it. It seemed like he was just sort of Jack Sparrowing his way through, but he got it.
Exactly.
I'm frustrated with the show for making me I'm conflicted. Do I care that he's delivering Ilaria to Cersei? Right? I don't like any of you. I don't like Euron. I don't like Cersei. I don't like Ilaria. Who cares?
It's supposed to be complex, and I get that, but yeah, I know what you mean. It's it's happening too quickly for me to process the heel turns that are happening.
Has Dany lost the Dornish army now because they won't raise their spears against King's Landing and risk Ilaria's life?
Oh no,
that might
Darkstar.
That might be what they're going for. Yeah, I could see that. In that way, it's another thing that Dany has to overcome. Trying to get the Seven Kingdoms.
I can't imagine most of Dorne is going to care about Ilaria. They might care about Tyene. She might actually be the real gift.
As Oberyn's daughter.
How is Dorne following a woman who just walked up and stabbed the ruler? It's like with Cersei, right? Cersei is the queen, and people are following her even though she blew up a sept. People are following Ilaria even
shut
though
your brain
it's
off.
Because this is a feminist show.
Shut it off. Just shut it.
Right, girl power.
And also, I guess they're saying that Dorne hated the way that Doran was doing things because a lot of Dorne was restless for Doran not taking any action after the death of Oberyn Martell, along with them still, of course, feeling the pain of having lost Elia Martell and her children, and Doran having done nothing.
Yeah,
they don't really show that in the show, though.
Just sort of one meta thing about the episode I kind of wanted to bring up. I thought an interesting thing that they did was Dany was set up through these first 2 episodes to win easily over Cersei. Cersei had, Jaime pointed out to her, we are screwed. And in this episode, they really leveled the playing field between them by taking out the Iron Fleet. They took out Dorne. So now she really just has Olenna Tyrell, but not really because Randall Tarley is turning against her. I think this is how they're going to make it seem like a battle until Dany eventually wins.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, they had to...
Or loses.
Yeah, maybe she has to abandon the fight with Cersei and go north. Maybe that's what happens, is Cersei wins. That would be kind of an interesting
That's fair. Oh, Aaron, you have something to say?
No.
Just
I'm
tired.
done.
Just done.
2 hours, 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
The last one was
what-
long, too.
that's-
What Melisandre said.
I was gonna say not what Melisandre said.
All right, so we
Also,
want to
they
wrap
did
it up.
this weird thing in this battle with the Ironborn ships where they like swing this. They have like a dude up on the spotlight, like he's on the front of the ships or like on the front of the trucks in Fury Road. He's just like swinging the spotlight around with like this white pink filter going on with it, and the color temperature doesn't match the orange that's in the rest of the scene. So you keep seeing this like pink white light like flash in front, and it doesn't work. They should have just gone with orange.
Do you think they should have
Yeah.
included the guitar guy?
Yes.
I mean, that was pretty much Euron.
Doof Warrior, was that his name?
Yeah.
Euron should have just had a guy strapped to the front of his ship, just like beating drums.
Yes! Wouldn't that be amazing?
Like-
It's like in
Yeah, it
Moana,
would be.
they do the like Mad Max Fury Road stuff with the boats with those little creatures. You know what I'm talking about? Moana, Disney
Oh
movie.
yeah. The little I forgot that they're called the little coconut peoples.
Euron's attack did harken back to Fury Road to me.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it.
It felt
Yes.
very chaotic like that.
Yeah. So how'd you guys feel about the episode overall? What would you give it on a grade from A to D? Because
B.
Meh.
B minus.
I think I was fairly critical, but I actually really enjoyed it. I thought it was like a B+. I thought it was very entertaining, even though I found flaws in what they were doing.
I liked episode 1 better.
Me too.
I think I hated this episode more, but I liked it better than episode 1. Make sense out of that.
So it made you feel more strongly, or yeah, like you
I
could
think-
watch this one again and go,
Yeah.
oh, that,
Yeah.
yeah.
This one has a bunch of fun flaws with it.
Yeah.
They're great to see. And overall, stuff happens.
Now that we're in endgame mode, I think it's easy to enjoy the show because season 5 and
Yeah.
6, it's like they're adapting the books much more, and we're like, this is annoying because this is different, and this is annoying because I don't like where this is going. But by now, it's so wild and off the rails. It's just kind
Yeah.
of fun to enjoy.
I
the
totally agree. There's nothing to compare it to, so
Yeah.
what are you going to nitpick? My only,
And-
I think
Yeah.
my nitpicks this episode were like, they redid things they did in the first episode they didn't need to do again. Like, that was my big problem. The rest of it I thought was great.
They're redoing things that they did in the previous seasons. And I don't understand because people were talking about this, about the pace of the show and how it kind of slowed down there for a little while. And now it's like a mad rush to the finish. It's like, why did you waste all that time in seasons 5 and 6? And now you're repeating yourself.
Do you remember when George said you can get like 3 seasons out of Feast and I'll have all the
Yes.
time in the world?
Whoa.
Oh boy.
George.
There's still time. Send Brienne through the Riverlands. I'm ready.
Any other thoughts? Any other notes?
Theon drowned God. That's about it. That's where we'll end it. Theon in the water.
Theon is
Like
Patchface
Patchface.
confirmed. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a cool tinfo.
All right. That's it.
Great
That's
balls
all I
of
got.
fire.
Cool. Good job, team.
Let's say goodbye. Let's shut the door of the Quill and Tankard.
Leave it open.
Are we doing?
I've been
are we doing
Bookshelfstud,
things?
aka Michael.
I've been Eliana, glass table girl. What? Why are we closing this door?
Well, we're leaving the Quill and Tankard. We're
Oh,
leaving
right.
the inn.
If we
Yeah.
leave the door open, we're having sex. If we close the door, then we're not. So that's why we're closing it. All right, carry on, everyone.
I've been JoeMagician, also known as Matt, and we're not having sex.
I've been Samuel, also known as Sam R.
I'm Fat Walda, and you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
Whoa!
Whoa.
That's a good one.
Oh, the door!
Thanks again to everybody who commented and created content, and thank you especially to director Mark Mylod, who we would love to have on this podcast.
We're never getting anyone
And
from the show on this podcast.
Rate, subscribe.
No. Oh yeah, yeah. Wait,
comments,
Michael,
don't
tell them to
forget
do the
stuff.
things.
Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Maester Monthly, to rate us on the various podcast hosting websites, subscribe, of course, and smash that MFN like button to let everyone know how much you love the folks at Maester Monthly.
Smash it like a Melisandre and Grey Worm.
We love you. So
Smash that button.
smash it.
Pound it.
Smash it so hard.
All right.
Smash the pillow
I'm
and
gonna-
Good lord.
I'm
Clap
gonna
out.
stop. I'm sorry.
Put
Okay.
forth-
3,
fingers in.
2, 1.
Clap!